before the sun rose on June 10, 1912, the residents of Villisca, Iowa, believed they knew the definition of evil. It was a distant headline from a big city, a cautionary tale told in a sermon, a vague and abstract concept. They were wrong. On that morning, they would learn that true evil was not a distant headline, but a silent phantom, one who had likely been inside the home of their most respected family for hours, patiently testing the weight of a familiar axe as 8 children slept peacefully in their beds. The Moore family, Josiah, Sarah, their 4 children, and 2 young house guests, were the heart of Villisca's modest, church-going society. Their home was a symbol of Midwestern peace and prosperity. But as the town slept, that peace was systematically and brutally extinguished, room by room, bed by bed. The act was so monstrous, so alien to their way of life, that it didn't just kill a family, it murdered the town's innocence. Villisca, Iowa, would forever be defined not by its cornfields or its quiet streets, but by the chilling, unanswered question of who walked through that unlocked door and turned a family home into a slaughterhouse. The day before the tragedy, Sunday, June 9th, had been a portrait of idyllic community life. The Moore family were prominent and active members of the Presbyterian Church, and that evening, they had attended the annual Children's Day program, which Sarah Moore had helped to organize. The event was a success, a celebration of youthful innocence and faith. The 4 Moore children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, participated, along with their friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, who lived just a few miles away. After the festivities, the Stillinger sisters, aged 12 and 8, were invited for a sleepover at the Moore residence, a common and comforting ritual of childhood friendship. The entire group, 10 people in all, walked home together under the late evening sky, their conversation likely filled with the cheerful residue of the day's events. They entered the house around 9:30 p.m., a simple, 2-story white home that represented a sanctuary from the world. There was no premonition of danger, no sign of the horror that was to come. It was this profound sense of normalcy, this gentle conclusion to a perfect day, that makes the ensuing events so utterly incomprehensible and chilling to the core. The subsequent investigation revealed a timeline of terror that was both methodical and deeply disturbing. After the family and their guests fell asleep, an unknown assailant, or assailants, entered the home. The murder weapon was an axe belonging to Josiah Moore, which the killer found in the backyard coal shed. The perpetrator then moved with a terrifying calm and precision through the darkened house. The first victims were Josiah and Sarah Moore in the upstairs master bedroom. Both were bludgeoned with the blunt end of the axe, their skulls crushed by blows of immense force. The killer then proceeded to the adjacent room, where the 4 Moore children slept, and dispatched each of them with the same brutal efficiency. Finally, the killer descended the stairs to the downstairs guest room, where the 2 Stillinger sisters were sleeping, and ended their young lives. The coroner would later determine that all but one of the victims, Lena Stillinger, had been asleep when they were attacked. This detail paints a horrifying picture of a silent, ghost-like figure moving from bed to bed in the dead of night, committing an act of total annihilation without waking the house. The crime scene left behind was a bizarre tableau of ritualistic staging that has baffled investigators for over a century. Every victim's face had been covered with bed linens after they were killed. Furthermore, every mirror and pane of glass in the house had been draped with cloths and clothing found in the rooms. This strange, deliberate act suggested a killer with a unique and disturbing psychological profile. Was it an act of remorse, an inability to face the reflection of his own monstrous deed, or did it stem from a bizarre superstition, a belief that the victim's spirits could be trapped in the glass? The kitchen yielded even stranger clues. A bowl of bloody water was found on a table, indicating the killer had paused to wash his hands. Beside it, a plate of uneaten food sat, and leaning against a wall was a 2-pound slab of uncooked bacon from the family's icebox, wrapped in a dish towel. These details, the covered mirrors, the uneaten meal, the out-of-place bacon, elevated the crime from a simple murder to a case of high strangeness. They felt like clues to a puzzle no one could solve, the cryptic signature of a deranged mind. The investigation that followed was a catastrophe of errors. In the hours after the bodies were discovered by a neighbor on the morning of June 10th, the crime scene was effectively destroyed. Before any proper law enforcement could secure the house, hundreds of curious townspeople traipsed through the rooms, contaminating evidence, touching surfaces, and even taking souvenirs. In an era before forensic science was widely practiced, this initial chaos likely destroyed any chance of solving the case. Suspicion fell on several individuals. A traveling minister, Reverend George Kelly, who had a history of mental illness and had attended the same church service as the Moors that night, became a prime suspect. He even confessed to the murders, claiming he had received a vision from God, telling him to slay, though he later recanted. He was tried and acquitted. Another theory pointed to a powerful state senator and business rival, Frank F. Jones, who had allegedly hired a hitman. Yet another suggested a transient serial killer was responsible. Over the years, dozens of leads were pursued, but each one led to a dead end, leaving the case to grow colder with each passing year. The failure to bring the killer to justice left a permanent wound on the town of Villisca. The community, once bound by trust, became a hotbed of suspicion and fear. Neighbors looked at each other with newfound distrust, wondering if the monster was one of their own. The Moore house stood as a constant grim reminder of the tragedy. It was a place where no one wanted to live, and it quickly fell into disrepair, its peeling paint an overgrown yard, a physical manifestation of the town's collective trauma. The story became a dark local legend. A ghost story used to frighten children, but for the adults who lived through it, it was a very real and present horror. The case represents a classic example of how a single, violent act can unravel the social fabric of an entire community, replacing peace with paranoia. The ghosts of the Moore family and the Stillinger sisters don't just haunt the house where they died. They haunt the history of the town itself, a perpetual reminder of a time when evil walked their quiet streets and was never held accountable. The Villisca Axe murders endure as one of America's most chilling, unsolved mysteries because it strikes at the heart of our most primal fear, the violation of the home. The case offers no comforting answers, no sense of resolution. The killer remains a faceless phantom, a void at the center of a brutal and inexplicable story. The bizarre clues left at the scene, the covered mirrors, the slab of bacon, the methodical nature of the slaughter, continue to fuel endless speculation and debate among true crime enthusiasts and historians. These strange details feel significant, like pieces of a cipher that we are still missing the key to unlock. What is your prevailing theory? Do you believe it was the act of a traveling serial killer, a hired assassin, or someone from within the community with a hidden, twisted motive? Share your thoughts and analysis in the comments below as we continue to search for answers in the darkness. In the 1970s, Circleville, Ohio, was the quintessential American small town. It was a peaceful, unassuming community where life moved at a slower pace, and the biggest news was often the high school football game. But in 1976, a poison began to seep into the town's bloodstream, delivered not by a phantom in the night, but through the mail slot of a front door. Residents began receiving anonymous, menacing letters, written in a distinctive, blocky script. The author seemed to know everything about everyone: their financial troubles, their hidden vices, and most notably, their secret affairs. The letters were filled with accusations and threats, demanding that the recipients admit the truth or face public exposure and violence. The author's primary target was Mary Gillespie, a local school bus driver, whom the letters accused of having an affair with the school superintendent. The letter writer was relentless, not only tormenting Mary and her family, but also plastering accusatory signs all over town, turning a private matter into a spectacle of public humiliation and fear. The peace in Circleville was shattered, replaced by a creeping paranoia. The monster wasn't hiding under the bed. It was in every mailbox. The campaign of terror against the Gillespie family escalated dramatically. Mary's husband, Ron Gillespie, received a letter that was more direct and threatening than any before, warning him to put a stop to his wife's alleged affair or pay the price. On August 19, 1977, Ron received a mysterious phone call. He left his home in a rage. His truck was seen driving erratically, and shortly after, he was killed in a bizarre single-vehicle crash. His truck had driven off the road and hit a tree. While authorities initially ruled it an accident, the circumstances were deeply suspicious. An inspection of his vehicle revealed that his gun had been fired once, and there was no evidence of him braking before the crash. The coroner later determined that Ron's blood alcohol level was 1.5 times the legal limit, leading to the official conclusion of a drunk driving accident. But for many, including the local sheriff, the timing of the crash and the preceding phone call were too coincidental. They believed the letter writer had murdered Ron Gillespie either by running him off the road or by threatening him into a state of panicked, reckless driving. The anonymous letters had now escalated from a cruel prank to a potential homicide. The investigation, led by Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe, became an obsession. The letters were analyzed, handwriting samples were taken, and the town was gripped by a real-life whodunit. Suspicion eventually fell on Paul Freshour, the brother-in-law of Mary Gillespie. Although the initial handwriting analysis was inconclusive, a postal pistol trap, an anonymous letter booby-trapped to fire when opened, was found along Mary's bus route, and a gun found at Freshour's home was identified as being the same model. Despite maintaining his innocence, Paul Freshour was convicted of attempted murder in 1983 and sentenced to prison. The town of Circleville breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing the reign of terror was finally over. The case seemed closed, the monster caged. But then something impossible happened. The letters started arriving again. From his prison cell, Freshour continued to receive letters from the so-called Circleville writer taunting him. The threatening letters to other residents also resumed, all written in the same distinctive blocky handwriting. It became terrifyingly clear that the real author was still out there, watching, writing, and mocking the justice system that had seemingly failed to catch them. The fact that the letters continued while Paul Freshour was in prison is the central enigma of the Circleville case. For years, Freshour fought to clear his name, filing appeals and maintaining that he was framed. He insisted that he was one of the letter writer's victims, not the perpetrator. The handwriting on the letters sent from prison was analyzed by experts, who concluded that it was highly unlikely Freshour had written them. This raises a disturbing possibility. Was an innocent man sent to prison while the real culprit, a master of psychological torment, continued their campaign of terror with impunity? If so, who was it? Theories have abounded for decades. Some believe it was another family member, perhaps with a deep-seated grudge. Others point to a conspiracy involving multiple people within the small town, working together to protect a secret. The letter writer's intimate knowledge of the residents' lives suggested someone on the inside, someone who was deeply embedded in the community's social fabric. The writer was a ghost who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once, a phantom who used words as their weapon. The Circleville letter writer was never definitively identified. Paul Freshour was paroled in 1994, but he maintained his innocence until his death in 2012. The letters eventually stopped, but the mystery they created never faded. The case became a piece of dark American folklore, a chilling tale of the terror that can be inflicted with nothing more than a pen, paper, and a secret. Unlike a traditional horror story with a physical monster, the antagonist in this case was an idea: the fear of exposure, the dread of having one's private life laid bare for all to see. The writer exploited the inherent fragility of a small-town social structure, where reputation is everything and secrets are a currency. They turned the town against itself, transforming whispers into written, accusations and gossip into a weapon of psychological warfare. The case is a disturbing exploration of the darkness that can lie beneath the surface of seemingly peaceful communities. A reminder that the most damaging wounds are often not physical, but psychological. The legacy of the Circleville letters is a profound sense of unresolved paranoia. Who was the writer? Was it one person or many? What was their ultimate motive? Was it simply a desire to cause chaos, a form of sadistic entertainment? Or was there a specific secret they were trying to expose or protect? The anonymity of the writer is what makes the case so terrifying. The monster had no face, only a distinctive handwriting. It could have been anyone: a neighbor, a co-worker, a supposed friend. This uncertainty is a unique form of psychological torment that lingered in the town long after the last letter was sent. The case serves as a chilling example of how easily the bonds of community can be severed by suspicion and fear. It demonstrates that a reign of terror doesn't require an axe or a gun. Sometimes, all it requires is a mailbox and the knowledge of a secret worth protecting, or a life worth destroying. The silence left behind is not one of peace, but of a story where the final chapter was never written. The Circleville case, much like the murders in Villisca, is a testament to the power of a mystery to define a place. The town is now forever linked to this bizarre and frightening chapter of its history. It's a story that has been analyzed in countless articles, books, and television shows, each attempting to unravel the tangled web of secrets and lies. But without a confession or a definitive piece of new evidence, the identity of the writer remains a matter of pure speculation. The case leaves us with the unsettling Realization that some people can inflict immense pain and suffering and simply get away with it, hiding in plain sight. They wear the mask of a normal citizen, all the while engaging in a campaign of psychological destruction. The Circleville letter writer is a ghost that still haunts the mailboxes of that small Ohio town, a symbol of the profound and lasting damage that can be done when the truth is twisted into a weapon. In the cold, hard winter of 1929, as the Great Depression tightened its grip on the nation, the rural community of Germantown, North Carolina, was a place of quiet hardship and stoic endurance. It was here that Charlie Lawson, a tenant tobacco farmer, lived with his wife Fanny and their 7 children. They were a poor but seemingly ordinary family, their lives dictated by the demanding rhythms of the land. In the days leading up to Christmas, Charlie did something unusual. He took his family into town, bought them all new clothes, rare and expensive luxury, and had them sit for a formal family portrait. In the photograph, the family looked stiff and uncomfortable, their expressions somber rather than festive. At the time, it seemed like a strange but perhaps celebratory gesture. In hindsight, it looks like a final, haunting record of a family on the brink of annihilation. It was a portrait of the dead, taken just days before they would be killed. This single premeditated act suggests that the horror that unfolded was not a spontaneous explosion of rage, but a carefully planned event, orchestrated by the family's own patriarch. On the afternoon of Christmas Day, the tragedy began. While his older children were visiting relatives, Charlie Lawson waited near his tobacco barn with a 12-gauge shotgun. His 2 middle daughters, Carrie and Maybelle, were the first to return. As they approached the barn, he shot and killed them, then bludgeoned their bodies to ensure they were dead. He hid their bodies in the barn. He then returned to the house, where he murdered his wife Fanny on the porch. Inside, he systematically hunted down and killed his remaining children at home, his daughter Marie and his 2 young sons, James and Raymond. The only survivor was the eldest son, Arthur, whom Charlie had sent on an errand shortly before the massacre began. After annihilating his family, Charlie Lawson walked into the nearby woods, and several hours later, a single gunshot echoed through the winter air. He had taken his own life. The methodical, almost businesslike nature of the slaughter was deeply chilling. He had executed his own family with the cold precision of a man carrying out a grim, predetermined task. The immediate aftermath was a scene of chaos and disbelief. The community could not comprehend how a man known as a quiet, hardworking husband and father could be capable of such a monstrous act. The question that hung heavy in the cold air was simple: why? The search for a motive began immediately, but no clear answer ever emerged. Theories swirled, each attempting to impose some form of logic on an utterly illogical event. Some months prior, Charlie had suffered a head injury, leading to speculation that a resulting brain trauma may have altered his personality and led to a psychotic break. Others whispered of a darker, more disturbing secret. Rumors of an incestuous relationship between Charlie and his eldest daughter, Marie, began to circulate, suggesting the massacre was a desperate attempt to cover up a terrible truth, perhaps an unwanted pregnancy. This theory was fueled by the claim of a family member who allegedly overheard Marie confessing the secret to her aunts. However, no physical evidence ever surfaced to support this claim, leaving it as a piece of dark, unsubstantiated local lore. The Lawson family murders became an instant and morbid sensation. The crime was so shocking, so contrary to the norms of family and community, that it attracted crowds of onlookers. In a decision that seems macabre by today's standards, the Lawson home, with the bodies of the victims still inside, was temporarily turned into a grotesque tourist attraction. Thousands of people flocked to the small tobacco farm to peer through the windows at the crime scene. The family's final somber portrait was mass-produced and sold as a souvenir. A popular folk ballad, The Murder of the Lawson Family, was written and recorded, turning the family's private tragedy into a piece of public entertainment. This morbid fascination speaks to the deep psychological impact of the crime. The public was desperate to understand, to find a reason for such a senseless act. And in the absence of answers, they consumed the gory details as a way to process the horror. The family was not allowed to rest in peace. They became a permanent fixture in the dark folklore of the Appalachian region. Unlike the Villisca case, the identity of the killer in the Lawson family tragedy was never in doubt. The mystery here was not who, but why the Absence of a suicide note or any clear explanation from Charlie Lawson left a vacuum that has been filled with a century of speculation. The head injury theory provides a medical explanation, suggesting a man not in control of his own actions. The incest theory offers a darker, more psychological motive, painting Charlie Lawson as a monster trying to erase the evidence of his sins. Other, more practical theories have also been proposed, suggesting that the shame of financial hardship during the Great Depression may have driven him to a desperate nihilistic act. Each theory offers a potential lens through which to view the tragedy, but none can be definitively proven. The truth, whatever it was, resided solely in the mind of Charlie Lawson, and he took that truth with him to his grave. This eternal lack of motive is what makes the case so profoundly unsettling. It's a story without a moral, a tragedy without a reason. The Lawson family murders serve as a chilling exploration of the darkness that can hide within the family unit itself. It is a reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not always strangers who break down the door, but can be the people we trust the most, the ones with whom we share a home and a life. The story forces us to confront the terrifying possibility that we may never truly know the people closest to us, that behind a facade of normalcy can lie a capacity for unimaginable violence. The family portrait, intended as a symbol of unity, became an icon of tragedy. Its somber faces, a permanent testament to the secrets that were hidden from the camera's lens. The new clothes they wore for the photo became their burial shrouds. It is this tragic irony that gives the story its enduring, heartbreaking power. It is a perfect, self-contained horror story where the beginning, the photograph, is also the end. The case of the Lawson family is a dark mirror held up to the idealized image of the American family. It is a story that has been passed down through generations in North Carolina, a local legend that serves as a grim reminder of a Christmas day that was defined not by joy but by blood. The questions linger. What was going through Charlie Lawson's mind as he waited for his children to walk into his line of fire? Did he feel remorse, or was he driven by a cold, unshakable resolve? The answers are unknowable, and it is this unknowable quality that makes the story so haunting. It denies us the comfort of understanding, leaving us with the stark, brutal facts of the crime itself. To ensure you don't miss our next descent into the archives of the unknown, be sure to subscribe and activate notifications. We will continue to explore these dark corners of history, seeking to understand the stories that society would rather forget.